This is Valerie Wendt, Vice President of Product Development here at Surgent CPA Review. Thank you for joining our webcast today on the fastest way to pass the CPA exam. Today, Liz Kohler, the founder of Surgent CPA Review, will be showing you ways to get a couple of parts out of the way before the exam changes in April of 2017. If you have any questions in the webinar, don't hesitate to submit in the question box of your webinar tool. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So Liz, take it away.
Thank you, Valerie. Hi, everybody. I greatly appreciate you joining me today. I wanted to spend some time with you giving you some advice on how to attack the 2016 version of the exam and possibly pass at least 2 parts before the exam changes. Before I get into actual timing strategy, though, I'd like to just give you some background information on where the exam is today and what's it going to look like in 2017. The first major change that I want to point out to you is that they are adding an hour to the Reg and BEC sections. As you can see here, they're currently 3-hour sections, and on April 1, 2017, they will become 4-hour sections. Why are they giving Reg and Bec an hour? Is they're going to increase the number of simulations on both those parts. Audit and FAR will also have additional simulations, but they're going to cut back on the multiple choice questions, so they felt like they didn't need to increase the number of hours on FAR and audit. If you look at the actual breakout of the 2016 exam, you can see there are 4 testlets across all 4 sections. The first 3 testlets are multiple choice testlets, and the last testlet is a simulation testlet. In FAR, Audit, and Reg, there will be 6 or 7 task-based sims, including 1 research question. And in BEC, there are 3 written communications. It's important to note the number of multiple choice questions in each of the testlets. You can expect to see 30 multiple choice in each of the 3 testlets in FAR and Audit, and 24 in Reg and BEC. Now, if you look at the 2017 format, you'll see quite a big difference here. The number of multiple choice testlets is going from 3 to 2, and the number of task-based simulation testlets is going from 1 to 3. And so they're breaking up the sims across 3 testlets. You'll note that also that the number of multiple choice questions is far less in FAR and Audit and BEC. Whereas Reg, they're actually increasing the number of multiple choice questions from 72 to 76. They are going to give you a break, which I think is a nice addition. After the 3rd testlet, you'll be able to take a 15-minute break that won't count against your time. You can still take optional breaks in between, but those optional breaks will count against your overall time. Right now, during 2016 and early 2017, if you take any kind of break, the clock continues to tick. So, you want to try to avoid taking breaks if possible, but I'm of the mindset that if you feel mentally that you need to step away, you absolutely should. It will probably help your overall performance in the long run. Now, there's been a lot of information out there. You might feel slightly overwhelmed with what you're hearing about the 2017 exam. Most people are concerned that they're increasing the number of sims. They're also adding a new sim called an enhanced task-based sim, and I think this is the one that most people are concerned about because it's going to be a tougher, more complicated sim, and the sim that is considered to be enhanced task-based may contain content from any one of the other 4 sections. So the AICPA has told us that they're integrating content now across the sections. And what that means for new candidates coming out, they really need to start the CPA exam process with FAR. Actually, the order that I have here, FAR, Audit, Reg, Bec, is the order that we're recommending in 2017 and beyond if you're starting the process. That's the order you should actually take the exam. And so this is an important change. Hopefully, if you're on this phone, you don't need to worry about the 2017 exam. So let's move on and talk about now in what order should you take the exam sections. I have to tell you the truth. There's so many people on this webinar today, and I bet you all have a different story. And so to answer this question, I actually have to hedge it a little bit and tell you that this is really not a simple question. You've got to consider your own personal circumstances. So, for example, are you working in audit or tax or maybe accounting? That is an important factor. If you're working in audit, you're going to do well on the audit section. I actually recommend that you defer that. Don't take that part in 2016 because if you're strong in it, then it won't matter if you wait until 2017. Same is true with tax. So if you're really confident about a part, that's not the part you should try and get in 2016. That may be one of the parts you can defer. Another important consideration is how long ago did you actually graduate from college, factored in with your employment history. If you're a recent grad, then you probably still have a lot of knowledge. You've retained a lot of knowledge, but facts show that the longer you're out of college, the more likely you are to forget the material that you're not using on a daily basis. So if you graduated a year ago and you're working in audit, not in tax, tax is going to be a tough topic for you to pick up again. And that's something that you want to factor in your ability to pass a section quickly, because we don't have too much time between now and April 1, 2017. You also have to consider realistically, how much can you study every day? We only have about 3.5 weeks left in this testing window. And so if you really want to take a part before the window closes on December 10th, what can you fit into a 3.5-week time span? And we'll talk about that strategy as we advance through these slides. So let's move on now to the next slide. And let me talk about what's coming down the pike, what you really need to consider as you determine what order. FAR and audit, they are, as I mentioned, they're going to add 2 additional simulations, and they're telling us definitely in FAR and audit, especially, you're going to see more content integration. You think about an auditor. As an auditor, we're rendering an opinion on financials that are in conformity with GAAP, and so you have to know GAAP. And so the examiners feel like those 2 go hand in hand. Now, there is some good news about both of these sections, and let me tell you the good news. They're taking out some content. So in both sections, they're removing the international, or cutting back on the international standards. In FAR, they're only going to focus on the major differences between U.S. GAAP and in the International Financial Reporting Standards. So we expect to see a lot less content tested there. And in audit, they're going to remove anything about the international auditing standards, the International Code of Ethics. So that's less content you have to study. So keep that in mind. In regulation, yes, they're adding additional sims. They're giving you the additional hour. But they are reducing the amount of content tested on the business law section. So they're taking out some of the stuff related to negotiable instruments and UCC. But what that means is they're going to be able to test tax more. So if you're a strong tax candidate, that plays well for you. Now, BEC, everybody's saying, take BEC, because it's changing the most. Right now, BEC is 85% multiple choice and 3 written communications worth 15%. In 2017, the multiple choice are only going to be worth 50%, down from 85%. And they're going to add 4 to 5 simulations that will be worth 35% of your grade. They're also keeping those written communications at 15%. So it's the introduction of the sims that I think have candidates kind of freaking out a little bit. And as an educator, I'll tell you that, I don't necessarily think that's all bad. When I give an exam, my students, a lot of them tell me they like the problems more than they like the multiple choice. Now, this may be different for you, but to be truthful, in a multiple choice question, the answer is either right or wrong. You have no wiggle room. In a sim, you can get partial credit. So when you think about the topics tested in BEC, there are some practical sims they can ask you, like what's, job order costing or process costing or break-even analysis. It's really not that bad. So those are the major changes. Now let's get deeper into what's happening across the sections that I really want you to consider before you determine what is your unique study plan strategy. As I mentioned, FAR is what they're telling us to take first going forward in 2017. And, I generally give that advice to most candidates even today. FAR is by far the most challenging part. And why is it so challenging? It's because it contains content from so many different topics. If you recall your undergraduate accounting education, you probably had 2 semesters of intermediate accounting. Some schools even offer 3. I'm sure you had a semester of advanced accounting. You might have learned some governmental and non-for-profit accounting. So you're talking about at least 3, maybe 4 plus semesters of accounting, and it's basically one huge cumulative final exam. That's what FAR is. And so we like to tell students, to take that as close to graduation as possible, because you know when you took a test in college, how quickly did you forget what you studied? As soon as you studied and took a test, you probably walked out the room and you began to forget the material that you prepared for on that exam. As I alluded to earlier, FAR will contain content that will cross into the other sections, so it's a really strong part. It's a content area that you have to know really well. And because it is so comprehensive, students spend the most time studying for FAR. So is now the best time for you to attack FAR? You know, that depends. If you're on this call right now and you've already maybe studied with another review provider and you have a really strong foundation, suppose you took the exam and you got a 70 or a 64 or a 74. Heaven help you if you get a 74. I'm sorry. Let me just say that right up front. That's the most terrible score anybody could get. But you already have a foundation, you know, you're close, then you really only need to study what it is you don't know, and you may be able to knock that part out in the 3.5 weeks that we have left in this testing window. So it really depends on where you are in your studies. Now, if we look at BEC, on the other side of the coin, most people are saying, oh, take BEC now because it's changing the most. Take BEC now because it's the easiest part. But, you know, I talk to a lot of students, and a lot of students tell me, no, it's not the easiest part. And why is that the case? It's not the easiest part for every single candidate. Well, it's important that you know the facts about BEC. First of all, the written communication topics can come from any one of the 4 sections on the exam. They're not just exclusively BEC. So I think of BEC as the part generally we take last. So if you studied for the other 3 sections, you're coming into BEC with a strong foundation, and you can handle anything they throw at you. It's also important that you know what's tested on BEC. It's like the kitchen sink part. You know, they've got everything in there but, you know, financial accounting and tax and audit. So it's corporate governance, it's information technology, it's internal controls relating to technology, economics, finance, strategic planning, budgeting, cost and managerial accounting. The good news here for BEC in 2017, they're taking out all that stuff related to audit, IT, controls. They felt like, you know, since audit tested IT and controls and BEC also tests IT and controls, it was redundant. So they're taking out that piece from BEC. So there's good news there looking forward into the future. But it's that those 4 to 5 simulations that people are really panicking about, you know, and again, you know, it depends on how you feel about structure and about the types of questions. Simulations are not that bad if you practice them, and you can get partial credit. So let's now move on to the overall exam calendar and where we are right now. You can see we're in November, which is the last testing month of the year. The way the CPA exam is traditionally structured is you can take it in the first 2 months of every quarter. The last month of the quarter is closed, and what they're doing is they're looking at the exams and updating the software. Because there are so many candidates that are trying to take the exam before 2017, they have opened up the closed months of December and March for 10 additional days. So you can test through December 10th, and you can test through March 10th. But once they switch over to the new exam, they're going to go back to the previously, the traditional calendar of having the 3rd month blacked out of every quarter. Now, I will tell you this. If you are on this call and you already have a notice to schedule, as soon as you get off this call, I want you to go to the Prometric site and schedule the exam parts that you would like to take before March 10th. And why I'm stressing this is because everybody's telling us that the testing windows are filling up rapidly. And if you know you want to pass 2, you want to pass 3, please go out there and schedule your exam dates after this call when I give you some study strategy and how much time you really do need to study to pass these parts. So that's something that you absolutely need to know going forward. Now, I will tell you that any study time is good study time. So a lot of people feel like, you know, I have to block off 2 hours. I'm going to study for the exam for 2 hours. And, you know, I don't agree. You know, if you're at work and you can bring your lunch and you can work at your desk, well, use that hour as a study hour for the exam. You know, if you're a morning person, wake up a little earlier and put in some study time before you begin your day. If you're commuting, use that time to study. If you get a coffee break at work, take that 15 minutes and do 10 multiple choice questions. Do a sim, you know, knock out 1 sim. Surgent's videos, we built them with you in mind. You're all really busy. And I also know that no one likes to watch a 3-hour, 2-hour, even 1-hour video necessarily. So we built our videos to be nano length. And what that means, they range from 5 minutes, 10 minutes, usually no longer than, on average, 20 minutes, because that seems to be the typical attention span. So I'm saying, watch a video on a 15-minute break. You may be able to watch 2 videos. If you're driving, the videos can be synced to your car, and you can listen to the videos while you're driving. So if you've got any commuting time, use that time to listen to the lectures. Now, one of the things that I really do stress when you are studying for the exam is you really need to study what you absolutely need to know to pass. And so many students try to study everything from beginning to end, and I'm going to tell you that is not what you need to do at this point. You need to learn how to study effectively and study efficiently. So what do I mean by that? I want you to really think about what's the best environment for you to study. I prefer, and this is my own personal opinion, I prefer quiet. But you know what, I have college kids, and they like to play music, and they can't stand the quiet. So what's right for you? Know your environment, because that's going to help you study. And when I say remove distractions, I consider music to be a distraction, but other people may find that soothing. But, by distractions, I mean, tell your family to leave you alone. Tell your friends, I need to take a couple hours, I got to study. If you got kids, that's tough, but, maybe getting up early or staying up a little later so that you can take care of your family and not feel guilty about studying, you've got to manage that. I also really think that it's important that you plan breaks when you're studying, because you can't just study constantly. You'll fry your brain. And here also, I can't emphasize this enough. Plan your studies, plan your breaks, and when you are taking a break, don't feel guilty about it. If you're going to go out and have a beer with friends, go out and have a beer and enjoy yourself, and don't feel guilty that you're not studying. That's your time to get away from the material, and you'll feel much better when you go back to the books the next morning. So don't feel guilty about that study time. Or that break time, you really do need it. Now, when I say study efficiently, this is really important. Many of you probably, when you began your CPA review studies, started with the very first chapter in a book and read the book and watched all the videos and did all the questions. Well, sadly, you overstudied. And I know, I'm an accounting professor, guys, and I can't read an accounting textbook page after page after page. You know what I do? I read 2 or 3 pages, and I realize I've thought about the laundry, I thought about the grocery shopping, I thought about the kids. I haven't comprehended a single word. And I'm an accounting professor, and I'm supposed to like this stuff, so I know how you must feel. And when you think about it, that is a total waste of your time. What we do at Surgent is we link every single question to, we hot link it to the exact paragraph in the text. So if you get a question wrong, you can link to the exact paragraph and just read that paragraph. So instead of reading an entire chapter, you only need to really focus in on what you don't know, what you're getting wrong. At this point, you shouldn't be starting from chapter 1 and working your way through. Let's weed through all that. Let's figure out where you're weak, and that's what we need to make a strength. So another thing I want to tell you is that when you're studying now at this point, you want to practice as many multiple choice questions as you can, but you also need to prepare with the simulations. The simulations are worth 40% of your grade right now, and FAR Audit and Reg in 2017 are going to be worth 50% of your grade. And I hear from a lot of candidates that when they begin a study session, they really want to work the multiple choice because they feel like, in an hour I can do 60 multiple choice and I've accomplished a lot. Whereas if I'm doing simulations, I may only be able to get 2 or 3, and they don't feel like they've devoted enough time, and they don't feel like they've got enough done. And if you go into this exam and you haven't practiced simulations, especially the new sim, the document review sim, which, by the way, we have several examples in our software, you're going to get hurt. And you know what? You're going to be a candidate that gets the 74 or the 73 because you didn't practice any sims. So you want to make sure you're covering everything that you're going to see on that exam, but focus in on where you're weak. And our adaptive technology does exactly that. We assess you as soon as you start in our program. We give students the ability to, any session, pick their session length, whether, as you can see here, you can do 30 questions, or, you know what, I only have 5 minutes. What can I do in 5 minutes? And we'll time you and give you 5 minutes worth of questions. You can also select the types of questions you want to see. I only want to see new questions. I want to see the questions that I missed or the questions that I had trouble with. And so you can hone in your study session to exactly the types of questions you want to look at. As I mentioned, our videos are short. They're nano-size in length. This particular video was on dollar value life loan. If you can see the time, it's only 13 minutes. In each video, we also give you a comprehensive and concise, hard to put that in one sentence, study guide. Every single video has this. So we encourage our students to download the study guides for the topics that they're struggling with, because they contain everything you need to know about that topic with sample questions and sample solutions right in the study guide. So if you have particular topics that you're struggling with, that will become your concise study notes. Instead of reading through an entire book, no, don't do that. Just focus in on where you're weak, and these study guides can do that for you. Now, I know why you all joined the call today. You want to find out, how can I pass 3 sections, or how can I pass 2 sections before April 1, 2017? I'm not even going to mention 4 because I think that's crazy, but hey, if you're really close, if you've gotten close to passing, you might be able to do 4, but I'm going to stick with 3 first, and then I'll go to 2. Now, I think 3 is a pretty aggressive plan, but if you've studied before and you have a strong foundation, you can do this. Now, typically, I'd recommend that you study for Beck. Let's say you start with Beck. You stay 3.5 weeks, roughly 20, maybe 30 hours a week, depending on where you are in your study plan, and you test by December 10th. Take a week off, then go after the reg section of the exam. And you could do audit here, too. It would be basically the same thing. Here you're going to study additional 5 weeks and test by January 21st. Take a week off and then go after your third part. Let's go with FAR. Again, you're going to study 5 weeks, and you'll be ready to test before March 10th, as close to the 10th that you could possibly find a date. So on my next few slides, what I've done is I've put together what the study calendar would actually look like, so that you can understand what that kind of commitment means. Now, I put 3 hours during the week and 4 hours each day on the weekends. You may be able to move that around a bit, and it may be less if you have a stronger foundation. But if you're going for 3 parts over the next few months, you're really looking at a pretty intense study schedule with not a lot of time off in between. But notice this gets you testing on the last date. And as I mentioned before, you want to make sure you hop online and see what dates are available. The last date might be not something that's even open right now, so you might have to test on the 9th or the 8th. If we go to the next section, I always recommend taking at least a week off in between the parts. You need that mental break. You pick up the next section. You study December 18th, pretty much the same schedule, take off for the holiday. I'm not giving any time off. Notice that for New Year's and New Year's Day. But you could take some time off and try to make up the hours on other days during the week. Brings us through January 21st. Take another week off. And now you're going to study the rest of January into February and early March. And you could get FAR done. So I'm even putting one of the harder parts up there. You get FAR out of the way. And that would leave you with audit. Now, as I said, you could switch any one of these out, for a part that you feel that you want to take. But you can see it's a pretty intense study schedule. So let's now look at what a 2-part study schedule would look like. Assume you want to pass at least 2 parts. Notice the total hours a week that I'm suggesting you study is much less, 15 to 20 hours. You're going to study your first part, and starting now, and take it the first week of January, and then you take time off, take your week off, and pick up for the second section, and you take that the first week of March. And with this plan, as you can see, if we look at the calendar, you're going to get your holidays off, so you're still going to get that break. But notice, too, the hours per day are significantly less. Instead of saying 3 or 4, you're saying 2, 2.5. And with this schedule, you could actually take a night off. If you want to take Friday night off or Saturday night off, have a date night, have a friend night, have a family night, you can do that. Look at December. I'm giving you off for the holidays and everything. That's awesome, right? And you're testing in the first week of January. So spreading 2 parts out over the next few months, you can see it's a lot more manageable, and it gives you, I think, a better balance in your life. And if we look at the next part, you take a week off, and then you continue with that study plan, 2.5 hours on the weekends and 2 or 3 hours during the week. Give yourself a night off, and you're going to be able to test by the first week of March. So this is a pretty realistic plan, and it will be different based upon your foundation. If you're a new candidate, you're looking at the higher end of the study hours per week, and if you're a retaker, you're probably at the lower end. And it should absolutely work if you were willing to put in that time. So that's my calendar plan. Now I also want to give you some exam tips so that you have success when you walk into the exam. I talked to a lot of candidates, and I of course took the CPA exam, and anybody who knew me when I took the exam would say that I did have that face occasionally. Most people feel extremely stressed when they're going through the process, and I bet you are too. And if the exam was easy, it wouldn't be worth what it's worth. So you got to keep that in mind. You are going to get a license at the end of this process, and that license will be very valuable. So there is, the trophy at the end of the rainbow here that we're all shooting for. Speaking of the clock, I don't know if you see that clock on in that slide. You should know that there's a 10-minute timer on all 4 of the exam sections, and what that means is, they give you instruction screens and copyright screens at the beginning of the exam. You have to get through those introductory screens within the first 10 minutes and answer the first question. If you don't, you've actually failed. The screen will go dark, and you've failed the exam. A lot of people don't know about that 10-minute timer, so I just kind of want to warn you, because that would be a terrible thing to have happen to you. Most people don't know about it because they get through the screen slides initially within 10 minutes, so it's not a problem for most candidates. You also need to go into the exam with a really good time strategy. How much time are you going to spend in each testlet on each multiple choice question, and how much time can you spend on the simulation? So let's talk about some of the things you need to know about the exam. First of all, each exam contains experimental questions. We call them pretest questions. In fact, it's a pretty large percentage. 15 to 20% of all the questions on the exam are experimental. They do not count. And of course, you won't know which ones those are. The examiners are trying to determine whether or not they want to make the question a permanent part of the database. So, when you're going through the multiple choice questions, here are some general tips that I give students. First of all, never leave a question blank. The CPA exam is a positively graded exam. It's not negatively graded. So if you don't answer a question, you can't earn any points. But if you get a question, and you don't know how to answer it, just guess. Go pick your favorite letter, A, B, C, or D, and don't spend any time dwelling on it. Just guess, because it may be one of those experimental questions, and you have a 25% chance of guessing right. So don't leave a question blank. Don't skip a question. Guess. If you can narrow down any choices, even better. You only have about a minute and a half to answer, on average, the multiple choice questions. So it's really important that you keep an eye on the clock. So if you get through your first 30 questions in the FAR and you've spent an hour, well, you need to pick up the pace, because you're never going to finish that test on time. So watch the clock and be careful that you don't get caught in any one question. So if you get a multiple choice question and you think you can solve it, but it's going to take you 10 minutes to solve, I'm going to tell you to guess. Don't spend 10 minutes solving a multiple choice question. All right, let's talk about the simulations now. Now, this is something that I think is really good for the 2016 exam. When you get to your 4th testlet, you can see every single simulation that they're going to ask you in the 4th testlet. There are tabs, and you open them up, and you can see exactly what the sims are. One of the sims in FAR Audit and Reg is going to be a research sim, which most candidates tell us, they have no problem getting through. I want you to open up every single sim, see what they're asking you. Please keep in mind that there is an authoritative literature tab in the simulation area, and you're going to need that tab to solve the research question. But what you also need to remember is that that authoritative literature gives you access to the authoritative literature. And if you get a simulation and you're not sure how to answer it, well, go search the question in the research, in the tab. You may find the answer in the authoritative literature, and I've had students tell me they were able to do exactly that. So they got a question they couldn't remember, or they just blanked out, and they researched it, and they found the answer. So use that to your strategy. So let's move on, Val, to the next slide, where I show you the exact time I think you should spend on the different types of sims that are on the exam. There's something called a regular task-based sim, and this is what's been around for a number of years. This typical sim is an objective type sim. You may have a drop-down menu where you have to fill in cells with numbers. On average, candidates should spend about 12 to 15 minutes on those sims. The new sim that's on the exam is called the document review simulation. I strongly encourage that you practice the simulation before you get into the exam. They started asking this simulation in July of 2016, and it was sooner than we anticipated they were going to start testing it, but we have them in our software. You're basically given a document that has highlighted hot-linked lines, and you have to determine whether the statement is correct or incorrect. And if the statement's incorrect, you have to find in the evidence and the additional documents they've provided what is the correct statement that needs to be in that line. And so what's great about the document review simulation is the answer is actually in the problem. The evidence is there. You just have to find it. And if you don't know how to attack it, the recommended 15 to 20 minutes that I have here could easily turn into 30 minutes, 45 minutes, because you kind of get lost in the simulation. So the good news is this is one simulation. The answer is right in front of you. You just need to find it. And practice here is going to be really key. As I mentioned, the research sim appears in FAR, Audit, and Reg. You have, maybe you need 5 to 10 minutes to solve that. That's about it. Practice would be key. We do have that in our software too, so you want to make sure it's not something that you're seeing for the first time when you take your exam. And then BEC has the written communication component. There are 3, if you will, call them essays. The examiners only count 2 out of the 3, but unfortunately the one they don't count, you won't know which one is experimental. So you have to answer all of them as if they are important. They are looking at content in 2017. They're not going to be focused on content as much as they are writing skills. So currently they are testing writing skills, and they're looking at conciseness, clarity, organization, punctuation, details, definitions, things like that. That's all part of the written communication piece. Now, as I mentioned, when you get to the 4th testlet, you can see all the simulations, and this tip I'm about to give you is crucial. What I want you to do when you open up all the sims is I want you to triage the sims. I want you to look at the 6 or 7 that are there and categorize them. Find 2 that you think you can answer pretty well, that you're really confident about, and do those first. Move on, find 2 that you're middle of the road, you're moderately confident about, do those next. And then the last 2, the ones that you feel least confident about, do those at the very end. Why am I saying to do the ones you're most confident about first? Is because you're going to get more points out of those than the ones you don't feel confident about. And I don't want you to leave any points on the table. If you run out of time in this exam, I'd rather you be working a sim that you weren't confident about, that you didn't think you were going to get a lot of points on. This way you're not leaving points on the table. And you want to make sure that you leave yourself enough time to answer the sims. That's why getting through those multiple choice questions in a timely fashion is really, really important. So that is my strategy. Now, I mentioned a couple things that Surgent offers. We do have the document review sim. We do have the study guides. We have a lot to offer students, the adaptive technology, which will cut your study time in half, where we assess you first, and we tell you exactly what you need to study to pass. We do practice exams. So you can get free access to our course. You can participate in a free trial, no obligation. You don't need anything but your name and an email address to sign up. And so if you haven't done that yet, please feel free to activate our free trial, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And one of the most important things you should try if you get to the free trial is our document review simulations, because not a lot of review providers have those out there, and we have several in all the sections that's being tested. So definitely take advantage of that opportunity. We also have another free resource for you. It's our flashcard app, and we have over 2,200 flashcards, questions, terms, things like that. Please feel free to go to Google Play or the App Store and download those flashcards. Just search Surgent CPA Exam flashcards, and you will be able to play with those in your spare time too. So, well, I appreciate you guys spending time with me this afternoon. I hope that I was able to give you some insight on how to pass at least 2 parts. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to Val to see if there are any questions that I can answer.
Absolutely. We have had several come in, Liz.
Okay, great.
So the first question is, hold on one second. They want to know if all of the questions in our review course are past exam questions, or should they be concerned if questions have come across in other review materials or not in Surgent materials?
Well, I'll tell you the truth about the review providers and the CPA exam questions. We all have a license with the AICPA, and the AICPA releases questions to the review providers, so we generally all have the same questions. We have close to 7,000 multiple choice questions. What's different from between the review providers is how we answer them. So my explanation will probably be different than an explanation you would see in another review provider. We also have several hundred simulations, and I think our simulations are really detailed and they have excellent explanations. So generally across the board, the review providers have the same questions. Sometimes we write our own, and that's where we'll differ as well.
Okay. The next question is from a candidate who has taken FAR twice. And let me just jump up. They've taken FAR twice with another review course and not passed. Should they sit for FAR again or skip to BEC or Reg, one of the two that's changing the most before the exam changes?
Well, if you've sat for FAR twice, what I would like to know, and maybe you and I can chat personally, is what your score was. If you were close, let's say you scored a 65 or higher, I would say you have a really strong foundation. And what we need to figure out for you is what it is that you don't know. There's something that you're missing that is preventing you from getting to that magical 75 passing score. And what I will tell you is that most candidates like to study what they're comfortable with. They don't want to study what they don't know. And what I'm about to say is going to sound funny, but it's so true. You probably don't know what you don't know because you don't know it. And so you may have gotten through study courses, other material, and you may have never seen the material that you're getting wrong on the exam. You just haven't gotten to that point. Whereas with our product, we will figure out very quickly where you're weak, and we're going to tell you exactly what it is you need to study. So if you were to take the FAR course with Surgent, you could go through our assessment, and after that I could tell you exactly what it is you need to study, and that would be where I'd want you to spend your time. If you go with another part, you're going to be starting from ground zero, and you're going to have to build all the way up. And so I would say for you, if you're close, if you got a score above a 65, that I would tell you to go back for FAR and take it. And if not, we can talk about other options for you.
Okay. The next question is related to the video study guides. They want to know if the study guides change to address individual weaknesses, or are they the same for everyone?
Well, we have over 350 videos, and so the videos are very topic specific. So for example, in the area of inventory, I might have 8 or 9 videos, and bonds, I could have 10. And so the video lecture guides marry up exactly with the videos. So if you understand, for example, FIFO and LIFO and retail inventory, but it's dollar value LIFO that you're not understanding, then you would just need the dollar value LIFO study guide. So in that sense, because we have so many videos and the study guides are broken up to match with the videos, it is going to be customizable to you because you're going to be only picking those lecture guides where you're having trouble.
Okay, this question is now related to the exam itself with regard to the testlets and flagging questions. When you flag a question in a testlet, can you go back and review it?
Absolutely. And generally what I recommend is that you should do that. When you're going through the multiple choice questions, flag it if you have, it's something that you're unsure that you guessed. And at the end, when you get through all the multiple choice questions, I want you to look at the clock. And I want you to see if you've exceeded your budgeted time on that testlet. If you still have time left in your budget to go back to the flagged questions and read them. And, spend more time. But be careful. A lot of studies have shown that candidates generally pick the correct answer initially. So changing an answer often is not a good idea. And also, when you're going through the multiple choice questions, I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, but I recommend that you actually slow down and read the question the first time carefully. A lot of students feel rushed, and so they read through the questions fast, and the examiners know that. So they will often place a word like not in a place in the question where your eye would read right past it and won't even see it. And then, of course, they make A sound so good that you default and pick A. and you don't even read B, C, and D because you figure, oh, A is right. I like the way it sounds. Well, you didn't read the question carefully, and you fell in the trap that they didn't like for you. They wanted you to pick A because A sounded good, but really the answer was C. But you never read C because you jumped on A too quickly. So take your time going through it initially. Read the question very thoroughly. Don't pick A unless you are certain that A is the correct answer. So if you land on A might be right. I'm not saying that A is always wrong, but make sure you've read the other choices and definitely rule them out before you ever pick A as your answer. And if you do that initially the right way the first time, hopefully you won't have to go back and look at any flag questions.
Okay. Next question wants to know if you have any suggestions for studying during tax season. Should studying be put on hold with the mandatory overtime and stress that's already present?
Realistically, I would say yes. Put it on hold. If you're in tax season, you know, most people get through tax season the middle of April, and so you're already looking at taking the new exam. What is the rush? You know, it costs money to take this test, and more importantly, it takes a lot of your time. And so I'd rather you be able to fully focus and take the exam with a clear head and not feel that stress of working a lot of overtime and studying for the exam at the same time. You know, what's a month difference at that point? You know, take it in May, take it in July, and get through your busy season and get that done, and then focus on your studies. That would be my advice.
Okay. This one's from a candidate who feels like they probably won't be able to sit for the exam until it changes, and they want to know if the Surgent software will help them start now to prepare for the new exam.
Absolutely. You know, as I mentioned, that that a lot of the content is staying the same. We are seeing new simulations, and those will be rolled out in our software in December. We also, see some of the content being deleted. We won't delete that content from our software until it's actively going to be tested on the exam. So what I would want to do for you is, if you started early, which you absolutely can, is give you some advice on what topics you wouldn't need to focus on now. If you wait until, let's say December to really dive deep into your studies, all those changes will be available to the candidates that tell us they're only going for the 2017 exam. So we can definitely give you some advice. We'll have both the old and the new ready to go for our students, depending on if they're taking the exam in 2016 or before it changes, as well as after. So you will have that option to start studying now for 2017.
Okay. This student says they're not familiar with the document review sims or the enhanced task-based sims. Where can they see an example and learn how to attempt the new sims? And will that enhanced task-based sim only be in one part, or will it be in all 4 parts?
Okay, so let's start with the document review simulation first. We have several document review simulations in our software already. So if you wanted to go and try those now, you could attempt them on our free trial. We've also done a few webinars where we actually walk you through how to solve them. And if you'd like to get a link to those webinars, just shoot us an email. We'll send you a direct link so you can view those sample webinars on how to actually solve a document review simulation. So 2 ways there. Dive into the free trial, or if you have our software, you'll be able to practice it, and then also view our webinars. Now, the enhanced test-based sims will not be introduced to the CPA exam until April 2017, and there will be at least one of them in the sections on the exam. They've told us that they're going to integrate content across the sections by using those enhanced test-based sims. So what I envision is, maybe an audit, for example. You may get an enhanced test-based sim that 90% of it is audit related, but 10% may have some FAR stuff in it. And vice versa. You know, in FAR you get an audit question, or in BEC you could get something related to FAR. And so it's not like one enhanced test-based sim is going to contain topics related to the other 3 sections. You know, there's going to be a little bit of the other section, maybe 1 or 2 in one enhanced test-based sim. We have over 100 added in our software for our 2017 database. So if students need to practice the enhanced test-based sim, which they absolutely will need to do, as our students will have access to those in their studies.
Okay. Another exam-related question. They'd heard that the exam is going to be graded on a curve. Is that true?
Yes, it is, actually. The examiners have told us that candidates that take the exam in the first few quarters, so from April 1st to May 31st, for example, if you take the exam in that time frame, the examiners are going to grade all of the exams in total before they release them. So no scores will be released on a rolling basis in the initial quarters of the exam. And what they want to do is they want to look at overall candidate performance across the country and determine what is the curve that they may need to apply so that an adequate percentage of people are passing the exam. So they don't want to see a major shift downward, you know, because they've made this change in the number of candidates that are passing the exam. So if they need to curve it, they will. So if you sit in the first quarter from April 1st to May 31st, they're telling us now that they don't expect to release the grades until mid-August. So it's quite a big delay for candidates, whereas right now it generally takes 3 weeks to get your score. So the good news there, you know, I've been telling candidates is actually take it in the initial quarters because they don't usually curve the exam, and they've told us they will be curving if they need to initially. So it's actually a good time to take the exam initially if you're going to be taking the new exam.
Okay. This one's from a student who I think just wants some encouragement, wants to know if you think that they can pass within 3 weeks. They've started studying, but they've gotten discouraged.
Well, it's normal to feel discouraged, and what I would love to do with this particular student is maybe talk to them personally. So if they could reach out to us so I can talk one-on-one with them and learn. I'd love to learn a little bit more about where you are in your studies, you know, what you're scoring, what type of review you're doing, and I can give you more one-on-one advice. You know, 3 weeks of studying, if you've been studying to, you know, already, is definitely doable. And, you know, we see candidates pass all 4 parts in 4 months. So it's definitely possible. As I mentioned earlier, the test is a challenge, and it wouldn't be worth what it's worth if it was easy. But once you do pass it, you'll have that license forever. They can never take it away from you. Don't commit a felony. And so, you know, and you'll be worth more. You'll get a raise. It's definitely worth it. You know, I honestly say I think about all the things I've done in my life. If I didn't have my CPA, I don't know, you know, I think my life would be very different. So it's worth going for. It's worth the time commitment. If possible, can I chat with you on a one-on-one basis and I can give you some more personal advice?
Okay. Another question comes in, and you know, they're probably in a situation where they're going to have a mix of taking the exam with the 2016 content and some in the 2017 content, and wanting to know if the review course will help them in that situation, or if they're not sure if they're going to be ready for 2016, will the review switch over to 2017? And I actually can answer that question if you'd like, Liz.
Sure.
So, you know, our course content right now is based on the current content specification outline from the AICPA. That's the outline that the AICPA uses in creating the exam. Our new update that's coming out in mid to late December is on the new blueprint design, which is the new type of outline for the new exam. And what our software is going to do, for those of you that are already in our program, you're going to automatically get this update. And what will happen is when you log in, the software is going to ask you, are you going to sit for this section before April or after? And it will direct you to the appropriate content. If you're a person that starts studying with the intent to sit with the 2016 exams, which means through March the 10th, you'll be able to test with that content, but then something happens and you have to reschedule your exam to April and beyond. What's going to happen is you'll be able to cut over to the new, and all of the work that you've done in your current study plan is going to stay with you. So you're not going to lose any work. The content itself from exam 2016 exam to 2017 exam, as Liz mentioned, the content is pretty much the same. They are realigning it. They are eliminating some topic areas. But in general, the content is the content. So you'll easily be able to cut over and continue your studies for the new exam.